and welcome to Alpha Book Club. This is going to be tough. If you're just joining us, this is our online book club for our Alpha community, our Alpha members. Each month we read a different book and talk about the themes, the characters, the adaptations, and everything in between. And very excited about this month's book. Plus, we have wine.
Yay!
Yay, wine. Sweetberry wine.
Sweetberry wine.
Sweetberry wine. I'd say you're supposed to spit this stuff out, but no way, Jose, am I spitting this stuff out? It tastes like fruit. I'm Hector Navarro, and joining me as always is Nerdist Editor-in-Chief, Rachel Heine.
Hi.
Give it up for Rachel.
Hello.
Maude is out this week. We miss you, Maude. We miss you, Maude. Have a great time in merry old London. She's in London.
We're gonna.
Too much wine. What?
I know.
We're gonna alienate all of our Londoner listeners,
when we,
watchers.
When we did Hitchhiker's Guide,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was on YouTube, and I saw there was a YouTube commenter who was
like
really mad at you.
Yeah, because I mistake like the difference between the United Kingdom, England.
But I don't think you actually misspoke. I think they thought that you were.
I'm still. Let me say something. I'm still confused about that. It's fine. It doesn't matter. I'll figure it out. I was ignorant about it, but I will learn.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's the same thing when people in the United States say that the United States is America, which is technically kind of true, but also North and South America are America.
Sure.
And I know people that like live in South America that are like say the right country, dude. Like, what country are you talking about? So, anywho's,
That
it's
makes
what's
sense.
it. I'm also still confused by this thing, and I've asked scholars and people that are good at English, so maybe you can help me with this, Rachel. It's like a grammatical thing.
Okay.
Years ago, I read in a Spider-Man comic book, actually, written by J. Michael Straczynski, who said that people that use the word A-N, in front of historical or historic,
yes.
It is an historical fact, is wrong. And it should be a historical fact because it's a hard H.
Yes.
And that people are only doing that to sound smart. And then, like, the next month or whatever, I went to go see the first X-Men movie with Patrick Stewart doing the narration at the beginning, and he goes, "It is an historical fact." I went, is that a mistake? Did Patrick Stewart make it? Like, is it a mistake when people say that? I've asked, like, English people, and they've gone, no, it's also considered correct. They're both correct.
Yes, I looked it up, and it's one of the recently actually because someone used it, and I was like, I hate that.
Yeah.
That's not
Don't
how
do
you
that.
should use
It's
it.
a historical fact.
But technically, I think in some form, and it might be in, it might be here versus the UK where they have. It's something like that. Where
see?
because same
It's
thing
all
with
connected.
quotes.
Yes.
Certain places, and especially in the UK, they do when you do any kind of quotation, you put the period or the comma outside.
Outside.
The US
Correct.
version
Is inside?
which is inside, except if it's a question mark or an exclamation point.
Oh.
That's interesting.
Unless the question or the exclamation point is part of the quote.
Of course, obviously.
Did you mention what an hour, like H-O-U-R?
An hour.
Or
That's
And that's
I think
okay
that's
because
when
it's a
that's
silent
okay.
H.
Okay.
Because the H is basically gone and it's just an O noise.
I think it's
right,
also whether or not it's allowed or written as well. I think it's more.
If it's written, it's okay, but if it's allowed, like, you better get it right.
I think it's the other way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I don't feel like I ever
This is
read
so confusing.
an honor or
But-
an hour.
But I'm glad I brought this up now at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
Because we get to get feedback from our lovely Alpha community. As always, welcome to our Alpha community.
Hi, guys.
We cannot do the show without you. We're so happy that you're here. All of our favorites are in the chat. Lost of Numbers, Bookie B618, Java Book, Geek Girl, Plague Wind. It's all of you guys.
Yay!
Oh, look, we got some new names that I don't think I've seen yet. Yay! Mastera says, yes, I'm still upset about that whole America thing. I know. It's something we're going to either get better at or nobody will care. Whichever of the two.
I wonder
Hi,
which
guys.
one of those things it's
I don't know.
gonna
Who
be.
cares? Hi, guys. We're in our second week of discussion about Neil Gaiman's American Gods. How's the read going for you all, guys? Let us know in the chat. How's it going? Are you liking it? Are you liking it? I did have to shoehorn a comic book reference in there. I have to do it everywhere I go with everything that I do.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. Every day. I'll do it every day. Rachel, do you want to talk a little bit about the previously on?
Yes.
Previously
I
on
sure
Lost,
do.
the first section
Previously
on American
Lost.
Gods.
Y'all know I can't talk about Lost.
That's why.
We're gonna
That's why I
go
do
on
it.
a whole tangent if I start talking about Lost. Although I feel like, okay, I'm gonna say something about Lost
Please.
before I get into previously on. I thought in Lost, and I was on, as we know, on all the forums, lostforum.net, and I would go on,
As we know.
do all this stuff. And I had all these theories that the island was this sort of apex of different mythologies and religions, sort of like a Jacob's ladder.
Love it.
And that's why we kept seeing different
Jacob
types
did
of...
live there. Jacob loves you.
Well, yeah, and that was part... I mean, I thought that was
Yeah.
part of it, and that it wasn't quite purgatory, but it was like somewhere like what you would think Atlantis or the pyramids or this place, Mecca, like this place of like where those things started. So it kind of ties into this, where I thought
does.
like there was a huge Egyptian statue, but then they had the hieroglyphics, but they had other stuff.
And you were kind of right. Yes, you were, because different cultures visited after eons and eons, and they would bring their culture and erect their statues. And
But it really didn't mean it. So yay!
That's a great joke. Great joke.
On American Gods. So American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Excellent book. And so this book is about gods living in America, in the United States.
Yeah.
Which is funny that we're talking about that.
Yeah.
So we start, our protagonist is a man named Shadow Moon, who is an ex-con. He is about to get out of prison when he discovers that his wife has died in a tragic accident. And we later learn that not only did she die in a car with his best friend, but she died, quote, with his cock in her mouth.
Whoa!
So
Hello.
he leaves
Internet.
prison to
They're
some
having an
pretty
affair.
bad news. They were having an affair. And he gets caught up in this huge thing that he doesn't quite understand. And what it is that the old gods of America, who were brought here by immigrants coming to the States and bringing their cultures and bringing their oral histories and bringing their stories, the gods live here now. And they are being threatened by these new gods of America. So far, we've met the guy, the douchebag in the limo who loves the internet and is kind of like a YouTube comment come to life a little bit, or like a forum for angry people on the internet that I won't name because I don't want them to find me.
4chan.
I don't want them to find me. But and then so he's going around with Odin, who goes by the name of Mr. Wednesday, and Odin is trying to round up all of the old gods to get them to fight these new gods with him, and they gather together.
Why fight?
Because they're losing their power, the power of belief.
Yeah.
So they believe, Odin believes that because Americans are worshiping these new gods, they're losing their power. You see them, they're living in these old houses, the Auroras, who are these Slavic gods, who are the evening, midnight, and morning stars, and the Chernobog, who is traditionally a like winged, evil, dark, like so old and dark that we don't even know really what he does. We'd have to ask probably Java Book Geek Girl.
I'm sure the chat knows.
So it's really cool. And so we last ended where they gathered together at this place, the House on the Rock, which is it's a roadside attraction basically that people go to that has sort of magical powers.
Yeah.
And he's trying to gather all the gods together. We meet Mr. Nancy, who's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
A couple other really cool gods. We see, I think, Kali, who's the Hindu goddess of death.
Yes.
A couple others. And Mr. Wednesday's trying to inspire them to fight, and none of them are really into it. So they're like, okay, he's going to start wheeling and dealing. We don't know what he's going to do next. And as they're moving to the next location and Shadow Moon is driving different gods back and forth, he gets kidnapped by these two suits that sort of X-Files-y. It feels like he's being interrogated by government agents, and they're trying to find out what Mr. Wednesday wants. And then they all get murdered by the zombie wife, Laura Moon, who has come back from the dead from a lucky coin.
Crazy.
There's a lot in this book. There's a lot happening.
But
already.
Gaiman does a great job of setting everything up. And one thing that I missed the last time we talked about this, but I think somebody told me on Twitter, is that one of the characters that Shadow meets in prison is this guy who has his nickname Low Key, because he does everything real low key. And his last name is Lyle Smith. And somebody said, that's Loki, the forger of lies, the smith of lies. That's Loki, like Loki Odinson or Loki Laufeyson. And I was like, what? Because he has all these anecdotes and stories and everything. And
he gives him the book about gods.
He gives him the book about gods. And I think at one point in this section, which we'll get into, he mentions Loki, and Wednesday Odin kind of goes like, yeah, that guy. Like he doesn't he seems like he knows something about that, but also kind of brushes it under the table, which is really interesting. But yeah, so a lot of great comments in the chat. I forget who said it. Somebody said that this is a reread for them, and they're loving it the second time around. They're falling in love with the book all over again. I think Java Book Geek Girl was saying that she loves the book, and that she wishes that her seminary friends were still around so that she could sit around and drink wine and talk about the Buffalo Man's question, what are gods, is what Java Book Geek Girl said.
Oh, yeah.
But it was, I forget who said the comment about rereading it. Who was that? Who was it? Reread for me. Pinkishly says reread. And
Pink, it was Pink something.
Plague Wind.
it was Plague Wind. There we go, Plague Wind.
Plague
Thank you.
Reread for me as well, Pink-ishly.
Pinkishly says reread for me as well.
Cool.
And Plague Wind says this is a reread.
And also, it's not cheating if you watch this before you read the book. It's like, you can watch the show and get some of the themes and stuff and then dig into it.
Absolutely. I think it's totally fine to know a little bit of the synopsis of what the book is, because when you go in, because even though we're going to sit here and talk about this until 7:30 or whatever, we will not hit everything. There's so much in it. And yet it still feels like, I don't know about you, Rachel, it takes me a while to get through the book. I'm going at a nice, slower pace. I'm pacing myself. I'm trying to capture everything and enjoy everything. And I even feel like the story itself has like a slower pace. These are sort of weeks and months going by in Shadow's story, and I'm trying to pace it out like I think this rad star show is going to do.
Oh, yeah.
It feels kind of a little bit like a Western for me. And again, I'm listening to the soundtrack to Logan, which has this real Western-y
I loved this.
vibe.
Yeah, I finally saw
Yeah.
Logan, you guys.
Yay.
A month and a half late.
Yay,
But yeah, I
it's okay.
loved the
It's okay.
soundtrack.
It's
And I was
cool, yeah.
thinking about you when I heard
Yeah.
there were moments that I was listening to and I was like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think it just kind of fits with American Gods. But one of the great things about this show is that we can talk to you guys in the chat literally face to face, except through the internet. We have a very special guest, a part of
Yay.
our Alpha community member, T-Boyce. Tyler is here. Tyler, are you there? Hey, what's up?
Hi.
Can you
Hello.
hear us?
He joined us for Ready Player One, I think.
Yes,
That's right.
hi. And I saw you at WonderCon. Right?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Thank you for remembering.
Yeah,
Tyler,
good to
thanks
see
for
you.
being back on the show.
I'm
First
so
question,
bad at
Tyler.
these.
Have you read American Gods before? I haven't. Rachel, you haven't?
Yeah, I have.
You have? Okay, great.
Yeah, this is my third and a half time
Nice.
reading it.
Very nice.
Or second and a half.
Refresher
third and a
before
half.
the show. I love it. Tyler, have you read American Gods yet?
No, I haven't. And let me just say really quickly, I kind of wish Maude was here to discuss the book, if only just because she kind of called me out last week. But I'm happy to be talking about
remind
it
us,
now.
what did she call you out on? What did she say?
Well, at the very end of the show, she was and T-Boys, you have to appear on the show next week because you said you have no job, so you have no excuse.
Well, thank you so much for being
Classic
here,
Maude.
T-Boyce. It is classic Maude, but she's in merry old London, and we'll have her back next week. But we'll be sure to we'll send her a clip. We'll let her know that you're back, and we really appreciate it. This is a great question, Tyler. Who's your favorite character or favorite god so far?
Oh man, I have to pick one.
Yeah.
It's tough because I was really into mythology in K through 12, and
Cool.
I especially love doing what the Romans did, trying to compare their gods to all the other gods. Oh,
Yes.
this god is just like Athena, who is just like Thoth, who is
Yeah.
basically just trying to make it sound like everyone was just telling the same story.
Yes.
If I absolutely had to pick one, it would have to be Minerva, who was called Athena by the Greeks, and who has similarities to Thoth. If only just because Thoth's been in a lot of these chapters. It's the first one that springs to mind.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Rachel, do you have a favorite so far?
In this book, I really like I keep calling them by their actual god names, but their names in the book
Their names in the story.
are Mr. Ibis and
Yeah, Ibis is great. Mr. Ibis is great.
Ibis and
Yeah.
Anubis?
No, the jackal.
Yeah, Mr. Jackal.
Yeah, Mr.
yeah.
Jackal.
I love those two. I love the stories that they tell, and I love their partnership. I like seeing gods who obviously work together in the mythology that they're from. So
Yeah.
the sisters with Chernobog and them
And the
together.
Egyptian gods.
And the cat, who's the god of the sun as well, and that feline character. Yeah, that dream.
that's
I mean,
great.
that's what I think. But we'll
Real
get
quick,
to
Shadow definitely had sex with her, right?
that. Oh yeah.
Okay, great. Just
Yeah.
double checking. Wanted to make sure I
Probably.
There's a lot
Probably.
of sex. in this
Great.
book.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. What other gods have we met so far? We met the like you said, the Slavic gods, Chernobog, and the three sister
Zoria
characters.
sisters.
We met I don't know if it's a god, but Mad Sweeney,
The leprechaun?
The leprechaun. We've met.
I think he counts.
Yeah.
He's
counts.
an like they're.
Counts.
I feel like they're less. They're called pixies,
Right, but gods.
but they're still gods.
And in this section, he even kind of goes into his backstory a little bit more, which kind of explained how some of the Irish gods kind of got transformed in the homeland and then came over here, which is really interesting. Gosh, who else have we met? It's funny, we both said gosh, as if we're offending
As if I
the
didn't
subject
just
matter,
if we didn't
the
just
gods.
Are we counting people who we met in the little like short stories, like kind of
Yes.
the flashbacks?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's the Ifrit, like the evil, dangerous jinn
Yes.
from Salim's story.
Totally.
Oh, man.
Salim and
we gotta
Jin's
talk about
story.
that. In
We should talk about that.
real depth with that one, but yeah, that's a
Holy
that's
crap!
a great one.
That was that one really surprised me. I was like, oh, this is where we're going. Cool. Okay, great. And it got super sexy, super sexual.
Yeah.
But that was a really great story, and I felt really bad because reading that. I'm just going to pour myself a glass of wine. I hope you are doing that at home as well, all of you listeners and Tyler. Reading that
I've got water. I hope that counts.
that counts.
Yes, someday it'll be wine, right?
Yeah. It's 8 a.m. somewhere, so you drink up that water.
Oh no, I poured.
Oh no, too much?
Oh, it's being into. I'll drink it.
Yeah, of course you will. But that scene with the genie character it starts with him as a cab driver, and Salim is in the backseat. This guy who's like really feels so overwhelmed by
being
New York,
here.
by being here, which was so relatable and it's so great. But the character, the Jinn character, says everybody thinks I grant wishes. And immediately I felt bad because I was like, oh, that's what I thought. I was like, I immediately pictured you as Robin Williams' genie, which made the sex scene real weird when we got to that. I was like, hello, okay, he's doing impressions, and
Oh
that's what
my
my brain
God.
did. But what I love about what Neil Gaiman does in his love of mythology, similar to yours, K through 6, Tyler, is that he's trying to essentially educate us about misconceptions, but also tell a new story with all of these mythologies interwoven, which I think is really, really great. So that scene, I mean, what did you think of that scene?
I see. I don't think of him as the
As
Ifrit as evil.
Yeah.
I thought of him as really sad.
Yeah.
I thought that he.
But what
he was-
happened at the end? He took
he-
the guy's
I think-
identity?
Yes.
Or did he
yes.
give the guy a new identity? What did he do?
No, I thought that he was deeply sad. He was saying that this is not my name, this wasn't my life, and that I think that act of love, he passed it on to him, and I think it felt like and I feel like I've read a story like this, and it's maybe from
Like a mythological story
like
about
the Prince of Thieves or something
Sure,
in that
sure.
that realm that's but it's a classic story sort of like
fable.
you have to give. It's a curse that you have to pass on to someone else in order to get rid of it. And so
Okay.
it's tragic, and you don't want to do it, and you don't want to do it, and people live, or whatever mythological creatures live eons without doing that. But then I feel like that's what he was doing was
So
he
do
was
you think,
done,
let
and
me
he
ask a
passed
question.
it on to him.
I forgot the genie's name, but I remember
The
Salim.
Ifrit.
Ifrit?
Well, he's an Ifrit.
He's an Ifrit.
Yeah, Ifrit. There are different types of jinn. The most evil and the most dangerous type of evil jinn are Ifrit.
Really? Because I thought he
See,
was so
I love
sad.
it.
Oh,
Tyler's
man,
bringing
that's
it. But
great.
that's really interesting is because I
Yeah.
wanted to
He
ask,
was sad.
I don't think that Neil Gaiman would be opposed to writing a sex scene between gay characters, I don't think.
No.
But is this a scene that happened willingly, or was it part of a curse? Because Salim says, and without thinking why, I gave the guy my hotel room number. Was that something that the Ifrit was subconsciously influencing Salim to be like, you know what, this is the guy I'm going to pass my curse to. I'm going to have sex with him, whether he's gay or straight or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get him to, like, just like a vampire hypnotizes a victim and go, you tell me your hotel room, I'll be at your hotel room later. Or was it, no, Salim's gay, finds this guy who's from, similar to the place he came from. They connect, they relate. He happens to be magical, but like he wants to
I
hook
thought
up.
it was both. I thought it was both. I thought it was.
That's so sad.
Yeah,
That
I
is
thought
sad.
it was that they had a connection.
Yeah,
And he showed
a little
up,
bit of the victim.
and that I really got a like tenderness between them.
It really was. It was.
And so I thought that was
But you know what it reminded me of?
authentic, but that he knew he was going to give him the curse.
It reminded me of the opening scene with the goddess who is having sex with the guy. Bilquis?
Yeah, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because Bilquis, like I was curious why they use the name Bilquis, because in the Hebrew Bible and Christian Bible, she's just known as the Queen of Sheba. It's like this kingdom in southern Arabia. And I managed to find this one haditha that talks about her as Bilquis, which is it's kind of a Greek bastardization of the Hebrew word for concubine or prostitute.
Okay. Okay.
So I found it very interesting that Neil Gaiman used that interpretation of this mythological figure, and it kind of does tie it a little bit into this story about the Ifrit.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think there's probably, and like you said, there's so many different versions of gods that when you think about how they get here, right?
Yeah.
It's through an oral history. It's through people believing them. So it's possible that there is a Queen of Sheba out there as well. It's possible that there are probably many different versions. And also when we see them in Odin's mind at the House on the Rock, there's a billion different versions of them.
in one spot.
So it
which
feels
is
like they can represent something, and maybe the most powerful that she is when she's using her sexuality against
crazy.
the patriarchy, which is something that I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Because when I'm watching stuff where there's like a succubus or sort of like praying mantis type, any sort of horror movie or thriller,
Black
anything
Widow
like that.
character.
Yeah, and I think, haha, they deserve it. They're dumb. This is like the lowest, the like smallest thing that she could do to just be like, hey, and then they're murdered. You know, like it's just like, I kind of love that because it's like, you're dumb. It's
it's
not
always
enough
great.
blood maybe
It's
on
always
these
great.
victims to go to one place at the same time.
Bucky B in the chat has a great comment. I couldn't decide if the mantle was passed or the djinn just switched identities. I also think I'm in the same boat. Like, I don't know if it meant that Salim is now a djinn,
That's what I thought.
or if Salim is like, or if the djinn was like, here, man, you hate your life and you don't want to go back home because you're a failure, quote unquote. Just be this taxi cab driver here in New York. Because Salim was, when he was leaving with the identity, he was like, well, all the streets are perpendicular. I know which way they're facing, easy enough. And he was like, down to be a taxi driver. And I think it was a way for him to escape his really sad life. I love how much we're talking about this specific little scene, which really doesn't have that much weight on the story so far, but it was so interesting. But yeah, one man's curse could be another's gift, I suppose. Bucky B follows up with a great comment. That's great. Tyler, question for you. What do you think Neil Gaiman is saying about religion and American culture in this book?
Oh, man. That's a hard-hitting question, especially because it's almost Easter.
I know, we don't pull punches here on Alpha Book Club with our guests. We hit them with the tough questions.
I don't know. I mean, like, I'm a poli-sci major, so instantly I think about, like, the impact it's had on politics, like, especially with the Christian right. Like, religion's always played, like, a big role in government in one way or another.
Very true. Very true.
As far as American culture, it's I think he looks at religion not so much as like its own kind of aspect, but as like its own unique thing, so much as like an aspect of culture and tradition. Like it almost seems like in the Coming to America stories, these people almost don't mean to bring over their gods. Like it was just kind of just by accident.
Very true.
And they got left behind when they went back to their home countries, or they just stayed and their gods stayed with them. Yeah. It seems more about just kind of like addressing like how we all come from these different places and we all find ourselves. We just wind up here and. Yeah. It ended up becoming like, okay, well, how do we interact with each other? I'm a leprechaun, but you're Anubis. You're the god of the dead. I mean, what does that mean? How do we interact with each other? Should we interact with each other?
Just drink all night.
It raises all those questions.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I think that's great. I think that Neil Gaiman is also kind of saying that the gods that we worship today, television, technology, credit cards, shopping malls, it's bad.
They're
And we
empty.
shouldn't, they're empty, and we shouldn't do that as much. I don't know if Neil Gaiman is saying we should all of us go back to worshiping Odin and Thor and all of these old gods, but I think what he's trying to say is that, like you're saying, Tyler, that like the things that make us who we are, a lot of the times are our pasts, where our fathers and forefathers and ancestors and mothers and grandmothers came from, and that there's really good stuff there. But now, when we all come together in this melting pot, the things that we worship today, television especially, that scene with Lucy, we'll talk about. That was like the most hilarious, like fucked up.
I know.
And it was so great. And I think Gaiman is saying, don't do that as much. You know, have it be a part of your life, but realize what you're sacrificing when you worship the god of Lucille Ball or Lucille
I do.
Arnaz, whatever the character,
like the goddess of television.
the
is
goddess
this the
of
scene you're talking about?
television. Holy moly, like that's bad. And then in this section, we got to a point where, I don't know how you felt about this, where Shadow gets dropped off in this small town that's covered in snow, and it's the sweetest, most quaintest, full of the most loveliest people, small town ever. And I'm like, and I started thinking, this small town in the middle of nowhere, with no connections to modern living, with no Hollywood freeways and with no movie industry, is the most grounded. It's a great way to live. Is the thing that I'm getting that Neil Gaiman is trying to say about like small town Americana, is like when neighbors love each other and care about each other, and there's people that watch out for you, and his depiction of like, you know, the mayoral office and the cop and all these different things, and like neighbors and everything, even like the mean lady next door being like, come on in, I'll heat you up, here's what you got to do, you know, and she has the one with the kid, like all of that just left me feeling Shadow needs to live here and just stop hanging out with Ian McShane, Odin. Like, he just needs to live here. So I think that's what Gaiman's saying. He's saying a little bit of that. I don't know.
I feel I agree with you. I think also part of it is, if you look at Shadow as someone meeting all different types of people and cultures, it's not only to learn from your forefathers and your history, but to learn from everyone else's, and that we all have a perspective. And I think that one of the things that the show is definitely going for, as Brian Fuller has said, is especially with what's going on right now, is the strength of America being a melting pot, and the stories and the cultures of everything, and that we all have something of value and something to learn from each other. And so I like that he's kind of taking this like road trip and meeting different people and learning their stories the way that hopefully we should be doing with each other.
Agreed.
When you talk about bubbles and all this stuff, like, you should just be listening to each other. You don't have to agree. You don't have to do, you know, like, I feel like that's really relevant.
Asshole. I feel like a real piece of shit. I don't know enough about you guys. You guys are all great. Rachel, I don't know enough about you and your life and where your parents and family came from.
We're gonna learn about it.
We'll learn about it.
We'll talk about it.
Okay, great. Tyler, thank you so much for coming on to the show again, man. So smart, so cool. We'll be sure to let Maude know that you showed up.
You showed up.
And you stayed true to your word. And your word is bond.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And we hope that you keep enjoying the book, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds great. I'm really enjoying it. Thanks for giving me an excuse to start on it.
Oh, awesome.
You got it. Thanks, Tyler. Bye,
Bye.
Tyler. See you later.
Bye.
There is
Bye.
an awesome conversation happening right now.
There always
if we
is,
can,
Rachel,
I know.
every
I know.
week.
I wish we could read everyone's. If we could just read everyone's chat out loud, that would be its own show. Okay, so it was about good versus evil
Wait,
and black and white.
Pinkishly says, I think Lakeside is sacrificing kids for their comfortable lives. Like, that's hilarious. That Pinkishly's like, there's not enough kids in that town. They must be sacrificing
There
their kids
must be
so that they
something.
have cool lives. Kids are the worst. I think that's really funny. There was like one kid. Yeah.
So there was, okay, so although Afrits are usually, this is Balkan in response to Java Book Geek Girl.
Oh, and the chat just keeps going.
I know. Agreed. Although Afrit are usually viewed as evil, one of the things that we have to do in American Gods is abandon our idea about good and evil. Gaiman is setting us up for a Stephen King-esque ultimate battle between good and evil.
But what's it? I guess evil is the new gods.
Well, but I also think that he doesn't, and Java Book Geek Girl says, he doesn't put the gods into black and white, good versus evil categories, much like humanity. It's much more complicated.
Yes.
And I do think that it is.
And Odin talks about that. He sets that up when he's like, the most dangerous people are the people that think that what they're doing is right no matter what. And then
most people are wrong at least a little bit of the time.
sure. And Shadow's like, well, why are you doing this? And he's like, because I want to. So I'm in the clear. Like, that's what Odin said. He's like, I'm doing this because I want to. I'm doing this because I want myself and my fellow old gods to survive, So that's why there's a storm coming, and that's why we need to sort of gather up. But when he has that little conversation with him, I think it's really interesting.
I agree.
Yeah.
I want to say one thing
Yeah.
about the Ifrit.
Okay.
Even-
Let's go back to that.
I don't think that it's a gift,
Uh-huh.
and here's why.
Ooh, okay.
Here's why. So when Salim finds out that there are jinn in New York, he says, "People know nothing about my people here," says the driver. "They think we grant wishes. If I could grant wishes, do you think I would be driving a cab?
Yep.
I do not understand." The taxi driver seems gloomy. Salim watches his face in the mirror as he speaks, staring at the Ifrit's dark lips. I mean, unless he's being hypnotized the entire time, I got the vibe that
He's into it. He's into it.
Yeah,
I love
which
it.
Don't
I
blame
looked up
him.
the casting. It's going to be real sexy.
Oh, man, dude.
Salim is played by an actor I am familiar with, Omid Abtahi, who's fantastic. And I'm like, this is going to be, oh, grrr. Yeah, it's going to be real great.
But he says, "They believe that we grant wishes. Why do they believe that? I sleep in one stinking room in Brooklyn. I drive this taxi for any stinking freak who has the money to ride in it, and for some who don't. I drive them where they need to go, and sometimes they tip me. Sometimes they pay me." His lower lip began to tremble. The
Yeah.
Ifrit seemed on edge. "One of them shat on the back seat once. I had to clean it before I could take the cab back.
Poor
How
guy.
could he do that? I had to clean the wet shit from the seat. Is that right?" I mean, and then they hold hands a little bit. But that to me is like, he
Yeah, they
wants
held-
out.
Yeah.
And I feel like the vibe that I got from this is that he's been doing this forever, that he must have inherited this from someone else.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to pass
being
it
a
on,
genie
but
or
he
just
lost.
the taxi driver thing?
Being a because he takes his son.
Wow.
I imagine that he's passing it on.
Yeah.
And I don't. I imagined that he had the fire in it. That
I
he
would
puts the
love
sunglasses on.
to be a genie. I'm going to be real with you, Rachel. I would love to be a genie and have
Phenomenal
phenomenal
cosmic
power
powers.
with itty bitty living space. I would trade it. It's worth it. Because if he's at a one bedroom, all of these characters have one bedroom apartments or whatever.
I have a
and I'm like,
one-bedroom apartment
yeah,
that I share with
except
another
I also
human.
don't have cool powers, and I'm going to live for thousands of years.
But
so
this
like,
one, I mean, okay, if you want to be a, but you don't make your own wish. Like, what version are we talking? Okay, we're gonna go back to Disney because
let's
you
do
did
it.
last
Let's
week.
do it.
But if we're talking about the djinn,
Yeah.
he doesn't grant wishes. Did
That's
you
fine.
not hear him?
Yeah, that's fine.
What powers does he have?
the power of long life, of
Of
living
of
for
a
like
long life,
centuries.
a long shitty life.
Is it shitty though? Because you could watch every movie and every TV show.
But he's not.
Yeah, that's his problem. That's his problem, Rachel. If I had this guy's life, I'd be like, oh, my life is so shitty. I have to drive taxi cabs. I have to pick up shit. But you know what? I'm gonna go watch The Wire. I've never seen it, and I'll keep doing stuff like that, like forever and ever. Like that's what my life would be. And
You'd go to the Oasis I would go to the Oasis library. I'm just thinking of the like watching every TV show and every movie.
for sure,
going back to
and just every
call
book,
back.
read every book, read
Yeah.
every, and with that amount of knowledge that you probably retain, hopefully, like, start wheeling and dealing, man. Like, make yourself famous. What if the Kardashians are old gods? And they've decided we're gonna make people believe in us again, worship us, pray to us.
They must be the most powerful gods in the world
Now,
at this point.
Now they are.
Them and Taylor Swift.
Same with Donald Trump. He's just an old dying god, and he's like, I'm gonna make everybody pray to me, make America great again. And every time somebody says that, he gets more power. That's what you
upsetting.
do.
Everyone stop.
You go into
saying it.
politics and you get really everybody stop saying it. You go into politics, you get real charismatic, or you get on reality TV, and bing bang boom, you're fine. People start worshiping you again.
But are
Rachel,
those,
it's easy.
Are those
Options?
old gods or new gods?
That's a great question. If
They're creating their own story.
Well, see, now that's Wednesday's problem. That's the old gods' problems. If the old gods feel like technology is ugly and they shouldn't do it. Oh, okay. I see the problem. Okay, I see.
But
what's
don't
happening.
they become
because,
what they?
Because I bet you if
They become an empty. The
I don't
things
know.
that you just named.
Yeah, they're all
those
belong
are
to a god.
Those are.
They're all empty.
But those are all empty things.
Those all belong to Media, who we meet in the story. Apparently, the character's name is Media, although I don't remember.
Do you know who's playing?
Yes,
Media.
Gillian Anderson. Yes, Gillian Anderson. Gillian Anderson from The X-Files. Very excited. But I also kind of wish that they could digitally manipulate footage of I Love Lucy, because I really want to see
I
that
thought that
scene.
they might do that. I know that scene is
Crazy.
fucked up.
Yeah, it was
Where
really
they,
messed up.
They beat Mary Tyler Moore.
Yep. And then cut to Lucy, and then she starts talking to Shadow through the TV. I love that scene. I love that stuff. Yeah, I really freaked out and really enjoyed that scene a lot, and it was really sad, and it made perfect sense that that's who the goddess of television would be, Lucille Ball. Lucille effing Ball, of course it is.
Do we have? I don't know if we have the the tweet that Brian Fuller put out, but he tweeted a picture Maybe someone can find it and put it in the chat.
Gillian Anderson as Lucille Ball.
So it's 4 snippets. There's an eye, a mouth, and a mouth, and they're cut together. Okay. Well, someone can find it, or I'll send it. I'll put it in the Goodreads or in the something afterwards. But it's basically, because I don't want to ruin it. But you can go find it if you want, because it's 4 different characters in pop culture.
I love it that she's playing.
And it's like their iconic looks.
I love it.
And you only see a part of her face as each one, and they come together. And when I saw it, I was like, like push over a table. Like, I'm so excited.
That's so great. But yeah, I broke my own logic, because I was saying that logically, if you have a pathetic, sad sack life as one of these gods, the Jinn, the Chernobog, Woden's Day, Wednesday, Odin, all of these gods that are saying people don't worship us anymore and we need power. I'm thinking, why don't you just get on TV? Because that shit belongs to another god. That's why they can't do it.
But and then I also feel like you become that empty.
You become that.
The power. I feel like the new gods are getting their power from
a different place.
Like a loss almost. Like when you think about.
It's not authentic. It's not
and
real.
we've talked about this so many times on the show, which is why I love reading, because you can find parallels to everything and make it work for what's happening in your life or in the world. We've talked about with Ready Player One, with even The Haunting of Hill House, which is going to be a Netflix series, you guys.
Very
we were
cool.
way ahead of the curve on that one, which is super exciting.
Sorry, we're not going to reread it, probably not.
But you could watch it again.
Yeah, you just watch it.
We could. You know what would be fun?
To reread it?
I don't know. Yes, but and no one has approved this, so this is just my idea. But it would be fun to do like a bonus or like a section on an episode or something when like once we've watched all of American Gods. To do like a bonus episode where we talk about the adaptation and like a
that'd be
final,
great.
and we could do that with Haunting of Hill House and Ready Player One.
We kind of did it with Logan a little bit. When we did the Old Man Logan comic, because they're as close but not really. So
do the comparisons.
That would be great.
But I think that would be fun.
Ready Player One comes out. We just do a bonus episode where
and just
you, Maude, and I just talk about like, okay, here's what the movie did right, here's what it didn't do right, and here's what it missed from the book, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Great. We could do that with Harry Potter. Whenever we read Harry Potter, Jurassic Park, the possibilities are endless.
Forever.
Forever and ever.
For all of time, if you guys keep watching.
I have a book club for all the time.
But I think that part of it is this feeling of anonymity on the internet, of losing yourself, of TV rather than, and I love TV. I watch so much TV.
Probably more than me.
TV is like my main, outside of books, my main medium, because they feel, and I'm glad that books are going to TV, because you flesh out these characters in a longer way. And I love movies, and
TV is great.
I love the arc of something. And
look at those great posters. Are you kidding me, Mr.
and it's
Wednesday?
Ravens. Also, I want to read one of my favorite quotes. Great
do.
Odin's Raven.
Laura Moon. I hope that we hear Usher's song, Oh My God. Oh my
Bill
God. I love
Quist.
that OMG. That's actually really smart.
I know. The
that's
marketing
really good.
for the show has been
It's
really good. But yeah, I think like those things can be empty if you don't look for the meaning in them, right? You can watch TV the way that you read a book.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite things to do, is look at the characters and all those things. But if you're watching TV just to turn your brain off, or using the internet to turn your soul off a little bit, then you lose that. And the power of these gods is in the belief.
Yes.
It's in the respect and the history, and that's that like ancient thing that is also about power, right? And do these gods deserve that power? Like that's another thing, is like we don't know.
They're kind of shitty people in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and so
just like the old gods were in mythology.
Should they be?
Yeah.
What gave them? Where do they come from? Like,
who said, what gave them the right? Who gave them?
But really,
what gives you the right?
But really, we don't know where they came from.
Yeah,
we
that's
know
really interesting.
that they were brought here, but we don't know where their power comes from. We don't know. It feels like. So I wrote a college essay. I wrote an essay my senior year, reading the Bible and analyzing God as a character, which people have different spiritual beliefs, and that's super awesome. And I wish that I had more of them, because they feel like they would be helpful when you're worried and scared and all these things.
My spiritual beliefs are comic books.
Yeah, mine is like.
My Bible is all of Marvel Comics since 1962. That's my Bible.
Mine's probably like emotions and like psychoanalysis. I don't know.
1961.
But I think that, so I wrote,
Yeah.
and I will never read it again because I'm sure it's not very good. But the idea, because it was 18, but the idea was that looking at God as a character, like looking at the Bible as a piece of fiction, whether or not you believe it or not is kind of outside the point, but just looking at it as a text, as that God is, humans are modeled in the image of God.
Correct.
According to the Bible. And in Psalms, in different areas, especially Psalms, God is sort of like this jealous lover, and he gets really mad when humans worship false idols.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a love poem, like a scorned love poem. And so my point was that if we are modeled after God, who's to say that God is actually perfect, because we are so deeply flawed.
Absolutely.
That
You know
we
what?
would
And
make
I
that
think-
choice.
And I think Jesse Eisenberg, Lex Luthor, said a very similar thing in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Rachel, I think he said a very similar thing.
Here we go.
He said something like, "If God is
Sweet tea?
perfect, then he can't be good, and if God is good, then he can't be perfect," or something like that. That decades,
Wise
eons old
words
conundrum
from the
Jesse Eisenberg, Lex
Snyderverse.
Luthor.
Yeah.
Yeah, wise words from the Snyderverse. Yeah. Thank you so much, Zack Snyder, for them wise words.
Oh man, we haven't met him yet.
Yeah, we haven't met Mr.
I
World yet.
know. All
But
right,
it's so interesting. There's so much stuff to get into.
So
should we
we've
just do a
done-
summary of what section 2 is?
yeah, section 2.
Okay.
You go ahead.
Let's scroll up a little bit on the discussion part of section 2. I'll just kind of power through it. We're heading to Cairo with Sam.
Which I love.
I got fooled and thought, oh shit, you got to go to Egypt, bro. No, it's somewhere in America, which is great. Thank you, Neil Gaiman. That's great. We meet Media, aka Lucille Ball, asking Moon if he wants to see her boobs, which is I was so like, no, impure. I was like, I freaked out so hard at that. But
Is
I
it
thought
wrong
was
that I
great.
was like, sure?
I was like, yeah, whip them out, Lucy. Let's see what you got. I love Lucy's. Let's see them. The next thing that happened is we meet Mr. Ibis, who is the Egyptian god of wisdom, and Mr. Jackal, or Anubis, and the cat, who is Bast, goddess of the sun, which I think was great. At one point they mentioned Set having left already. I think Set maybe went back home to Egypt or somewhere else or whatever. And
Which
also,
is funny because people do think about Anubis a little bit less, the god of wisdom.
yes.
And Bast, but I feel like Set would be like, oh, so over Anubis getting all the attention.
Sure.
And
Set's like,
disappearing,
I'm out,
you
I'm
know?
gonna bounce.
Yeah.
I think that was a really fantastic section. One of my favorite sections, I just want to read this before we move on to the next bit in the summary, is I marked it here, is how Mr. Ibis describes what he looks like, and Shadow Moon describes what he looks like. It's not what like a black person looks like today, but it is not what
How I
an
did that too.
Egyptian person looks like today, but like how Egyptians back in the day in ancient Egyptian times looked more like black people, but not like, it was just this beautiful description. But Mr. Ibis starts describing the history of America as a continent itself and the visitations by gods. And I just want to read it because I think it's fantastic. Let me see here. Here it is. Here we go. Shadow stopped in the street and stared. Are you trying to tell me that ancient Egyptians came here to trade 5,000 years ago? Mr. Ibis said nothing, but he smirked loudly. Then he said, 3,530 years ago, give or take. Okay, said Shadow, I'll buy it, I guess. What were they trading? Not much, said Mr. Ibis. Animal skins, some food, copper from the mines in the Upper Peninsula. The whole thing was rather a disappointment, not worth the effort. They stayed there long enough to believe in us, to sacrifice to us, and for a handful of the traders to die of fever and be buried here, leaving us behind them. He stopped dead in the middle of the sidewalk, turned around slowly, arms extended. This country has been Grand Central Station for 10,000 years or more. You say to me, what about Columbus? Sure, said Shadow. Obligingly, what about him? Columbus did what people had been doing for thousands of years. There's nothing special about coming to America. I've been writing stories about it from time to time. They began to walk again. True stories? Up to a point, yes. I'll let you read one or two if you like. It's all there for anyone who has eyes to see it. Personally, and this is speaking as a subscriber to Scientific American here, I feel very sorry for the professionals wherever they find another confusing skull, something that belonged to the wrong sort of people, or wherever they find statues or artifacts that confuse them. For they'll talk about the odd, but they won't talk about the impossible, which is where I feel sorry for them. For as soon as something becomes impossible, it slides out of belief entirely, whether it's true or not. I mean, here's a skull that shows the Anu, the Japanese aboriginal race, were in America 9,000 years ago. Here's another that shows there were Polynesians in California nearly 2,000 years later, and all the scientists mutter and puzzle over who's descended from whom, missing the point entirely. Heaven knows what'll happen if they ever actually find the Hopi emergence tunnels. That'll shake a few things up. You just wait. Did the Irish come to America in the Dark Ages, you ask me? Of course they did. And the Welsh and the Vikings and the Africans from the West Coast. What in later days they called the Slave Coast or the Ivory Coast. They were trading with South America, and the Chinese visited Oregon a couple times. They called it Fusang. The Basque established their secret sacred fishing grounds off the coast of Newfoundland 1,200 years back. Now, I suppose you're going to say, but Mr. Ibis, these people were primitives. They didn't have radio controls and vitamin pills and jet airplanes. Shadow hadn't said anything and hadn't planned to say anything, but he felt it was required of him, so he said, well, weren't they? The last dead leaves of the autumn crackled underfoot, winter crisp. The misconception is that men didn't travel long distances in boats before the days of Columbus, yet New Zealand and Tahiti and countless Pacific islands were settled by people in boats whose navigation skills would have put Columbus to shame. And the wealth of Africa was from trading, although that was mostly to the east, to India and China. My people, the Nile folk, we discovered early on that a reed boat will take you around the world if you have the patience and enough jars of sweet water. You see, the biggest problem with coming to America in the old days was that there wasn't a lot here that anyone wanted to trade, and it was much too far away. I love that whole section so much.
It's so good
Boom.
because it
Suck
takes,
on that, Columbus.
Yes, super
scam
true.
artist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
super, yeah. But it's also
great.
I love the idea, and I was talking about this with someone today about the idea of the impossible and science and history, and those are all things that were discovered and found by human beings.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and there are all these things that we can't explain, and we're like, oh, well, we'll figure it out. So I love when science and religion come together.
Yeah.
Because it's I can't remember what book or
I
film
had a
I'm
physics
talking
teacher
about.
in high school, in 12th grade, Mr. Kuhn. And Mr. Kuhn said he was a physics teacher, like an honors physics teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And he believed that being so much about science as he was, he still every once in a while spoke about his religious beliefs. And he goes, when you look at science, when you look deep down at some of the core scientific things that we've discovered, you look at it and you go, this could not have been by accident. And he believed that it was designed. And I think that that is a completely legitimate and beautiful perspective to have. This idea of look at all of the scientific discoveries that humans and people can make, things like plastic, which changes the world, plastic, and think about what we'll do hundreds of years from now. And to think that that is, comes from a place of God creating everything, I think that that's fantastic. I think it's wonderful.
Or even like the way that we think. Like I don't know about you, but I don't always think in words. Right? There's like
Go on.
There's just something happening in the back of my mind while
Especially at night right before you go to bed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's you have your train of thought and you have concrete
that's
ideas
ghosts.
that you're thinking, great.
Those are ghosts.
Oh my God. Talk to me. Yes, please. Make communion with me. But there are all these things that you can't explain, and before we had science,
Yes.
they were gods. Why does the sun set and rise? We know now why that happens.
Yep.
And it's the
Back
same
then it
thing
was-
with death. We don't know what happens after death.
We will know someday.
Exactly, and
We will
that's the
cure
thing
it.
is they're the same thing. They're answering the same questions, which is what Tyler said. So I think it's really, I love that because it takes history and mythology and whatever lies in between that
Yeah.
and brings it to this place of like, of course they did that, which is true.
Yeah.
Just because we don't know how they built the pyramids doesn't mean they didn't obviously
love it.
build them.
I love it.
you know?
And that whole section about Mr. Ibis, he's basically, and Neil Gaiman's basically dismantling that whole Eurocentric perspective of world history. That like everybody was a goon, was some idiot with sticks and rocks until the Europeans came and showed everybody everything. And it's like, get the hell out of here with that crap. Like, that's bullshit. And
Yeah.
I love that section so much. Next, we move on to Salim and the Ifrit, which we already talked a little bit about that. That whole thing happens, which is going to be really interesting to see how that pays off later on. I've never read the book. I don't know what's going to happen. We learned a little bit more about Shadow Moon's past. Somebody was complimenting me on my Thor shirt. Thank you very much. It was a props. I did it on purpose.
Awesome.
Mighty Thor.
I kind of did it on purpose because
yeah,
I
you
picked
did.
like mythical
Yes.
monster creatures.
Of course. Of course.
I
Modern
love.
gods.
I love.
What was
just
that?
a little,
10 minutes? Okay, great. Thank
a
you.
little tidbit.
I'm drunk. Keep going.
I know we don't have mod to split.
Yeah, we're doing a whole. We're doing a. Oh Jesus, Rachel. Okay,
I'm
great.
sorry.
Okay, great. A whole bottle between two people. Oh, and I'm little. I'm just a little guy.
Normal.
I'm just a little
It's
guy.
Fine.
I'm just a little guy.
I'm
I
not
got little
little.
hands. I fit in little places. I'm just a little guy.
I'm a giant lady.
Keep going.
but
What were you talking about?
I was gonna say that I love, and it's in this. It's in the same section. I have two parts I want to bring up.
Oh, I know Neil deGrasse Tyson would disagree with me. I disagree with me. I'm just saying I think it's fine for people to have those beliefs. I think it's beautiful. I think
Yeah,
it's great.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Just for the record, I am an atheist and I don't believe in an afterlife and I don't think God is real. But I love stories and mythologies, and my Bible growing up was literally Marvel Comics, and I learned to be a good person because of it. So cheers to everybody who had otherwise.
I think
It's all
really
good.
you don't have to believe in religion to find its merit or
Not at all.
or power in belief, which is what this is about. And
Yeah.
I took a lot of religious. I was an atheist. I'm now agnostic because I choose to think that I am just too small and dumb to know. So
Which we are.
yeah,
Which
I'm
we are,
mostly
yeah.
I'm an atheist, but I'm like, but maybe I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
I don't really care because if I find out, I find out. If I don't, which I probably won't, I won't.
People have said like, well, what happens if you arrive at the pearly gates? And I'm always like, I'd hope God would be cool enough to be
Yeah.
like, hey man, not your fault. You're a cool dude. Come on in.
It's the same thing as like if you were born in an era
Yeah.
or a place in the world where you didn't have access to
Come on.
traditional. Yeah,
Come on.
I'm with you.
God's
But
gonna be a chill dude.
I will say, okay, so when he's talking to the jackal and they're just chatting different things and they're carrying a body and Jackal says, I have a transfer board. You don't have to carry her. Ain't nothing. I'm a big guy. It doesn't bother me. And it goes into how he was really small, all
Yeah.
elbows and knees, and that he loved to read and he didn't feel comfortable anywhere, and then he grew to be really big, and that and also the beginning of the section where he says that he's numb from the cold, but he's numb inside and he's been numb for a long time.
Yeah.
That to me felt like, okay, we're really getting to the heart of Shadow here, of like everyone thinks he's this big, strong guy.
Yeah.
And he inside is still the little kid who was all
love it.
elbows and knees that loved to read about gods and and doesn't want to talk to anyone, doesn't want to make any trouble. And
He's Captain America. He's Steve Rogers. He's Skinny Steve in Big Steve's body.
And
he is a man who knows the value of true power because he is a weak man.
I just like, as someone who shot up like a weed,
Oh.
immediately.
Rachel, you're very tall.
I'm a very tall lady, and always feel, and I crash into stuff
Sure.
all the time because I feel like I'm smaller than I am. I feel
Mm.
like a tiny little ghost girl, and I'm like a giant. And so when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, he's
Yeah.
perceived in this way that's not how he feels inside, which is exactly how all the gods feel. There are all these anecdotes about them that aren't really true, and I feel like everyone can relate to that. And I really felt like we
that's a
got to
great
know him in a really
comparison.
sweet way, that
Absolutely.
that he's this big, beautiful, scary,
Gentle
intimidating
giant.
guy, and inside he's like just wants to be home with Laura, and he's a puppy.
He's a puppy. He's puppy. He's puppy.
so
It was great. We
sad.
got to learn a little bit more about him. I think that he is partly Native American, which I think is going to tie into how he was the chosen one by Odin to be like, you are a spiritual person. You have ties with some sort of a people that have roots here. I think he's a Native American. That's just my theory.
There's a couple of
Of
moments
clues, yeah,
throughout where
yeah.
people keep asking him that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Next, we see Mad Sweeney return, and he's asking for that lucky coin. Poor guy, and he's like strung out on heroin or something, is what Shadow is observing, and he can't give him the coin back because he gave it to Laura, and Sweeney kind of like understands, asks for $20, and then goes and drinks himself dead. And we don't know how he was killed. We don't know what happened, but cops are there at the body, and he shows up because he's working for Mr. Ibis, and then goes and takes Sweeney away, and they give him a final night send-off, which I thought was a great scene of him, Mr. Ibis, Mr. Jackal, just drinking and talking about Sweeney, and before they know it, when they're getting too drunk, Sweeney's there just like, let's party, guys, let's keep partying, this is what actually happened, oh, it's crazy, and then that's their night, and then in the morning, he's a body, he's a cadaver.
Yeah.
Next, we meet Lakeside and its inhabitants because Shadow Moon gets dropped off by Mr. Wednesday, and I love that whole section. I thought it was fantastic. And what's this last part? Rututu and Agasu? What is that?
I think
don't know
maybe
what
I
that
went a
is.
chapter ahead, so don't worry about it.
Oh, really? That's a chapter
I
ahead?
thought we went to 11.
Uh-oh. Are we? I stopped at 11. I stopped at 11. I went
Okay.
9, 10, and then I stopped. Is that in chapter? Should I have gone to 12? Should I have
No.
gone to 12?
No, I think it's fine. No, I think we stop.
Okay.
We stop at 10.
Okay.
We'll read 11 through through 15
11 through
for
15,
the
love
next
it.
one. So don't worry about that one. But I do think I'm really excited to see, because there's still so much that's gonna happen
Cool.
in this book. Like we haven't
And
even met.
so far, it's been a slow burn.
Yeah.
It's been a slow burn, and I've been okay with it. I've really, again, I'm taking my time with the book, but I know that it's building towards something. I love the idea that Neil Gaiman wrote this after coming up with the title first, American Gods, threw up, and then they came up with the cover art, which was that striking lightning. I don't know if we have an image of that. The lightning on the cover of like a sort of like Midwestern landscape or whatever it was. And his publisher or whoever sent him that cover, and he was like, okay, yeah, they're the one there on the left. He's like, all right, I guess I got to write this book. Like, literally didn't have a book written until he saw that. Put it up on his wall as kind of this inspiration board and went from there. I love that, but I still feel like it's this great experiment of building towards something, which I think is going to be fantastic. So, yeah.
I'm so glad that you're enjoying it.
I am.
I'm really stoked because I love this book.
Listen,
so.
I don't keep every book that we read on Alpha Book Club. I tend to give some books away. I'm keeping American Gods. I'm keeping it. I'm keeping
I
it.
hope you guys are enjoying it too in the chat. You guys are, it's so fun.
It is.
I'm so excited.
A highlight of my week. $20 is all I need to get out of here, says Plague Wind. I know the part with Sweeney and Seth, and you guys are having such fantastic conversations in there. Huge thanks to everybody in the chat that are continuing to chat about it. Also, be tweeting us throughout the week if you're reading it. I feel like I need to do that more because I'll be reading something and I'll be like, this shit's crazy, dude. But I don't want to spoil things, but I'm just going to do like vague tweets about it.
Here's what we should do. We should start a thread right now when we leave with the Alpha Book Club hashtag with some of our favorite moments.
We'll just all add
do
to
it
that.
throughout the week because I have one that I didn't get to, but we'll do it on Twitter.
So you guys have homework for next week. You have homework. I know that it's tough to ask you guys to do work, but you're already reading the book anyway. Your homework is to read up to chapter 15. You stop at 15. You stop at page 408 in our copy in the 10th anniversary edition. That's your homework. Also, don't forget that we are on Goodreads. Search Alpha Book Club on Goodreads and then come and discuss it with us. If you're interested in joining us via Skype on the show, just let Courtney know in the chat and she will help you move that process forward. And we want to meet you. We want to say hi. Also, send your recommendations for whatever the next book is going to be to @Nerdist, @Geek and Sundry, @Join Team Alpha with the hashtag Alpha Book Club. We're going to be writing them down. I'm really excited about what the next book is going to be. I'm always excited about what the next book is going to be. There's a lot of great options. I've never read Harry Potter. Jurassic Park would be great. Han Solo would be great, but literally whatever else. What are some things you want to read?
Oh man,
His Dark Materials.
Oh, his
come on.
Yeah, His Dark Materials.
What else?
Is probably
tease them.
His
Rach.
Dark Materials. Handmaid's Tale is also coming out. That one's super relevant.
On Amazon, on Hulu.
Tragically, that's Hulu.
Hulu, yeah.
That one is one that, dude, you guys.
Oh, let's read the 1,000-page.
It's too real. Oh, it.
2
months.
Should we save that
it,
for?
I would absolutely do that. There's
2
some
months it?
weird.
Okay.
Yeah, that would have to be a 2-month one.
Okay.
Also, I would love to know
September,
how
October?
the pacing is
September,
for you guys.
October?
So go to Goodreads or on Twitter and let us know like how the pacing for the books is.
Like too much, too little?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
just
great.
curious how that is for everyone.
Yeah.
I would also love. Oh, I just had one, and then Stranger in a Strange Land by Heinlein.
Ooh.
Yeah,
very
that's
cool.
a trippy '60s sci-fi book that
I got a lot of great soundtracks for that.
Oh my
I got
God,
a lot of great soundtracks for trippy
Hector,
60s,
you'll love
60s
it so
stuff.
much. It's all about connection and people and humanity and like in the '60s. Oh,
love
it's so
it.
good. Yeah,
I can't
that's
wait.
a good one.
Oh, huge thanks. Again, everybody's having just great conversations. Guys, stick around for Choose Your Destiny. And then afterwards, it's Crafting Comics with Jim Higgins and Tiffany Smith. You don't want to miss them. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
You're the best.